Angel Castro is a philosopher, and he's coming on our show now once every couple of weeks because he's got great insights from a biblical perspective, and that's why he's here. Before we get into the show, we got a sale running right now to the end of July. So you pick up 2 Rungs of Disclosures plus a free bonus DVD from our 10-part UFO series, all for $29, $29.99 plus shipping and handling. So check it out, LiamMarzulli.com. We'll get into the interview with Angel, but first, a word from our trusted sponsor. A recent study found nearly half of patients following popular weight loss trends quit within a year. They often use lower than prescribed doses and ultimately lost less weight than they were led to believe. This is why I am beginning to use this new product. And folks, the results are pretty promising. It is designed to naturally support my body's own GLP-1 production and boost levels by over 50% without drugs, prescriptions, or needles. It promotes feelings of fullness, reduces cravings, reduces my hunger hormones, help me to lose fat instead of muscle, and supports healthy blood sugar levels. Folks, summer is here. It's time to get that beach body ready. Grab yourself a bottle of GLP-1 now to save up to 44% only at http://trim Plus, you'll also get 2 free ebooks titled The 3-Week Diet and 53 fat-burning smoothies and milkshakes. Once again, this offer is only available at http://trimwithla.com. Trimwithla.com. Folks, check it out. Angel, thanks so much for coming on the record. Really appreciate it. You and I were talking over the weekend about Ben Stein's movie Expelled, which I think is about, 15 years old, something like that?
Yeah, I thought it was 2009, I think it was.
And in that, and I have used clips from that movie in presentations, but Ben Stein's an actor, for those of you who don't know. One of his starring roles is in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he sits in front of the class and goes, Bueller, Bueller. I mean, anyway. And I've seen him a few times in my goings and comings up here in the Santa Monica Mountains, but I digress. So, but Stein sits, and this is very serious stuff. And the movie's title is Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. And Ben Stein sits down with one of the premier evolutionists of the 21st century, Richard Dawkins, and they go at it. Pick it up from there, please.
Kind of what we were talking about is, when we talk about the academic community, and as children become teens and they become young adults, they're told these things about evolution and how it contradicts the Bible. And that's kind of where Stein kind of picks off, because you have like Richard Dawkins and you have Daniel Dennett, who has some clips in there too as well. And that's 2 of the 4 horsemen of atheism. And essentially what they're saying is, hey, we have evolution. We can explain this. No God needed. Therefore, atheism. We have no purpose. And that's just not true. And unfortunately, we get a lot of young Christians who run into these academic circles and these challenges and these dilemmas, and they're told, hey, look, we have science. We know what happened here. We know we can explain this. We have evolution. We know evolution is true. We see it. We have history of it. We have records of it. Therefore, God is not true.
Right.
And that's just not true.
But of course, I love in that film where Ben Stein kind of holds Richard Dawkins' feet to the fire. And he goes, well, where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? And of course, now here, and this you got to remember, folks, this is one of the most brilliant minds of the 21st century. Now, he's an atheist. I totally get that. He also uses the Bible when he points to the conquest of Canaan, and because he doesn't know about the Nephilim. Oh, it's genocide. See? Well, it's not genocide. And I'll quote Judd Burton here because he came up with it. It's not genocide. It's gianticide, because that's what he's doing. The Nephilim are in the promised land, but Dawkins doesn't know about this. But I digress. A little bit of a rabbit trail. But Stein goes, well, where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? And of course, this is, Dawkins is one of the leading voices, like you said, of atheism. And he goes, no one knows. I told you, no one knows. And he's kind of shaken. He's a little ticked off that his feet are being held to the fire, as it were.
Yeah, that was a great line and a great part of the movie. Because science, when it comes down to science, science is reductive. That's a part of science. They want to reduce these causative effects and these situations, these phenomena, down to reductiveness. So what happened, what caused it, everything is reductive. But eventually you get to a point where there's no more reduction.
Bingo.
And then they don't know. They're like, well, we don't know. So they can only be like water. You can reduce water. Water, we know, scientifically it's H2O. It's hydrogen. And we know what hydrogen is. We know the, atomic molecular structure of hydrogen and oxygen. But when it comes to creation or, intelligent design, they reduce it. Well, we can reduce it to this. We can reduce it to the Big Bang. We could reduce it to the, slop of mud and then, life, formed out of it. But what caused all that? Is that much? And they don't know. They don't have an answer. And really nobody has an answer. And that's where, when I think about creation, I think about one thing just very practical is you're a great author. There's many great authors out there. If God grabbed you and 10 other authors and said, hey, watch this. And then he created the whole world, the whole galaxy, the whole universe, the cosmos and everything. And you see all this events happening. And he says, no, go ahead and write that down and tell everybody about it, right? Right? And you're a great author. And there's a lot of great writers out there. So how could we expect a document with a different language that's not as complex as ours to be able to explain, the supernatural events, in a few chapters? It's just not possible. So when they look at that, they say, well, the world looks at that and they say, well, we see in Genesis and creation and this, and it says, God did this in a certain amount of time. And we know that's not true because we have evolution, we have carbon dating. But one thing they don't realize is God isn't, he's not on our time frame. He's not subject to time. He's outside of time. And so it's not like he's on an 8-hour work week and say, well, looks like, it's 5:00. I'm going to come back on the ocean tomorrow. No, as a matter of fact, when we look at the universe now, it's expanding.
Right.
It's infinite and it's expanding. So we could say he's not done. It's still happening. Everything that he's doing is still happening. It's still growing, still expanding. And that's why, when scientists, approach these problems, they kind of leave that out because they'll never get there. They'll never solve that problem. They'll never reach the ends of the universe and how vast it is and all these new planets and all these new galaxies that are being created right now in real time. And so, but for some reason, they believe that they've solved this problem.
And I think part of it is, I think it goes back to the fact that as an atheist, there's no supernatural, there's no God, there's no prophecy, there are no miracles. So in my opinion, it's a very hopeless, it gets into some of the philosophies, philosophers like Nietzsche. It's like, oh my gosh, why even be here? It's like, let's go home now. There's no hope for any of us. Whereas, as a Bible-believing Christian, my hope is that one day I'm either raptured, or if I die before the rapture, I will be in the presence of the Lord. I know that. I absolutely know that. So, you get, and I get it, we live in a very complex world, and the atheists will look at this. And you remember when Darwin, I'm kind of hopping around it, but this is the point. So Darwin writes, this whole theory of evolution, and he publishes this thing, and they're, oh, look at this. But Darwin had no idea about the DNA molecular structure. He had no idea about it at all because it hadn't been discovered. And yet this is the building blocks of the entire planet. Everything that is alive has a DNA molecular structure. And so I love it when Ben Stein sits down and throws that out to Dawkins and he has no answer. Well, where did this come from? Well, I told you we don't know. And then he goes, well, how do you think it happened? So pick up the story from there.
Yeah, and when again, they don't have an answer for that. And when I look at that, I look at it this way. So when a lot of times when people look at creation, they say, well, everything, couldn't have been just void and non-existent. And then all of a sudden there was one man. Yeah, and we have fossils, we have archaeology that says, this predates, 6 billion years and stuff like that. That predates, the Bible and stuff. Which when you look at the old text and the original scriptures in the original language, it was saying that this earth that we live on now was chaotic.
Very much so. Something happened.
Right. It was chaotic. It was without order. It was without harmony. And so what creation did is it basically took that chaos, and there were probably prehistoric men. There were probably dinosaurs. There were all these creatures around, and there was life here. But what it did was it now put it in order. And another thing about atheism and kind of what they say is they have some very strong evidence for biology. That's their a lot of their backgrounds, and so they just don't believe in free will. They say it in the movie. They talk about it. They say, well, it's everything's just determined. Everything's material. This is what we're doing. We don't have a darn of free will. And I think that's where there's a major divide, because a lot of people just don't believe that. Because when we study consciousness, we know that consciousness has a subjective ontology. It's different for everybody. And if it's all just material, then it would be different for everybody. We wouldn't have this subjective ontology that we do now. And then I look at further evidence from there. And now I do believe animals do have a level of consciousness, and they're learning more and more about different species and stuff like that, or levels of consciousness. And even, the Bible talks about that, about whales, praising God, and other mammals, and I really believe that. But there just comes a time where we realize that man, and even man before Christ, and without any type of religious teachings, they always were seeking something. They're always looking
for meaning.
They're always looking for a deity. And that just tells me something, that our species is different than the rest of the world. And then we can ask ourselves, well, why is that? And I think it's because we do have a soul, and we do desire a relationship with a higher power. And I believe that our wants a relationship with us.
What amazes me, it's like and I've sat down with atheists and crossed swords, and I'm always throwing things like this. Well, what about the Shroud of Turin? Sure. And, here's the most studied artifact on the planet. And of course, we have a film on this. Thank you, Gil Zimmerman. But, the most studied artifact on the planet, they have no idea how it was created. And so the scientists look at this, well, it's kind of interesting, blah, 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 beep, beep, beep. Hey, this is the most important event in all of history, the resurrection of the God-man. And this is scientific, because we know that this image was not produced by the hand of a man. So how did it get there? And that's where, it's like science just kind of falls off the cliff, because here they're faced with it. And I've talked to atheists who've seen our film, and they don't want to talk about it, essentially. They run, deflect, run into the other room, because it scares the crap out of them.
Yeah, they start gaslighting, and that's even saw some examples of that in the movie, where they're saying, well, if you believe in, intelligent design or creation, then you're just as dumb as, anybody else.
Isn't that great? You're always painted as a moron or an ignoramus. It's just amazing.
And that's so funny, because they don't have all the answers. And when I look at creation, and this is important for younger people to realize, that, your salvation is not based on creation. It's not. It's based on what you believe, that Jesus Christ was born of the Virgin. He was the Son of God. He was eventually crucified, on the cross for our sin. He was a sacrificial lamb. He was killed. 3 days later, he rose from the dead, and now sits at the right hand of the Father. And that's where our salvation lies, not in creation. And so it's odd to me. And even Dawkins says, well, I was, a believer and this and that. And then I got evolution. And then I said, okay, well, everything just falls apart. No, everything doesn't fall apart. Even if you have questions about creation, that's not where the foundation of your salvation is. It's in Jesus Christ. And so for Christians who get challenged on evolution, just realize that is not the foundation of your salvation. It is Jesus Christ and him dying on the cross, and that's historical. So that
It is absolutely.
debatable.
Yeah. Let's talk about, the double helix of life. I led up to it, but we didn't really ask the question. When you look at the DNA, which is the building blocks of all life on this planet, I mean, and Stein sits down, where did this thing come from? It just didn't fall out of a tree. And I remember reading Watson and Crick, who discovered DNA. It's been there forever. They just happened to be the first people to, oh, look at this, there's the DNA. And that's years ago. And now, of course, now we can map up a genome and gene splicing and all this other stuff. Doesn't know anybody. But Crick was a vexed man, I'm quoting here, because he realized, and I want you to speak to this, that no matter how many millions of years of prebiotic slop, and where did that slop come from, right? Where did this stuff come? Where this thing just didn't, somebody created it somewhere. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and when I think about the adapted nature of evolution, and I think about an all-powerful God, and I think about him creating something that's to be sustainable. Like, why wouldn't he give us this adapted nature? Like, what supernatural, all-powerful being would not? If I wanted to design a garden tool, I would design a garden tool that hopefully is sustainable, that lasts a long time, and that's what's happening with our world, and that's what's happening with all these species is they are able to adapt. We are able to adapt.
Yeah,
we're adapting right now. There's studies that are saying, human beings, we're losing our chest hair. We're not as hairy. Why? Because we don't have the harsh climate conditions, the cold. There are some people that are born without wisdom teeth. It's just, we don't need them any. So, our jaws are getting smaller. We don't need wisdom teeth. So evolution and science are really great. I really enjoy the new discoveries and the new science. But I also enjoy and say, wow, like God really had his hand on this. He really knew what he was doing. And that's where I go when it comes to evolution, because we do know that we are evolving and species do evolve. But that in no way denies, our creator or an all-powerful God. In fact, if, he is what we say he is, and we believe that he is, then yeah, it would create a sustainable universe, a sustainable earth, a sustainable world, a sustainable us that allows us to adapt. And you just look at our whole ecosystem and how it adapts and how it changes and how it moves. That's intelligent design. That's something that we would never thought of, that we're just barely figuring out. And that's why he's the God of wonders. That's why it's fantastic to see the advancements of science and the discoveries, because then we could just sit back in awe and say, wow, yeah, God really has this figured out.
And I want to add something to that. When you look at the complexity of the DNA molecular structure, and it's different in every organism, I mean, it's different. And when you look at the DNA, you can take two hummingbirds and you can mate them to the second coming. And you're always going to get hummingbirds. You're not going to get an elephant out of that. Now, you can go in and gene splice and mess around with stuff. And I get that. This is what the days of Noah. They're mixing the seed. They're messing around with the genome. We're right back in it now. We weren't there 100 years ago, but we're here now. But, if you get two hippopotamuses and, they're making whoopee, as it were, and you're going to get another little baby hippo. You're not going to get an elephant. And because the DNA is a lock code, it's a lock code. Yes, you'll get microevolution. I agree with you, where you'll adapt to your surroundings, and all this other stuff. But you're still a hippo, and you'll always be a hippo. And no matter how many times hippos procreate, they're going to procreate hippos. And the thing the thing for me that really throws it back into the evolutionist camp, if that's true, then just show us one species that's becoming something else. Just show us one. Don't give me the beasts of Darwin, because they're cracking nuts. That's micro. I get that. I agree with you. You're right. I totally agree with you. Show me a species, something new. Show me a chimpanzee who wakes up in the morning in Mizzou and starts speaking, in Japanese or something.
Or is on his way to becoming a human.
You're not going to see it.
Yeah, you're not going to.
So, I mean, we're all supposed to be knuckle draggers and up the chain we go. Well, why aren't we seeing that today? Why isn't there some chimp somewhere going, excuse me, I'm tired of these bananas. It's always an English accent. That makes it funnier. Excuse me, zookeeper, I'm talking now, listen to me. I'm tired of bananas. I want a steak. I mean, it's just not going to happen. They're intelligent, they're smart, but they're never going to become a human being unless, of course, you start, splicing and who knows what they're doing in dark, deep underground labs. So let's get back. One of the aspects of, I'm not going to mention any names, but certain Christian circles is this tenacious hold to a 6,000 year model based on Bishop Unger. And I get that. If people want to believe that, knock your socks off. I don't. I think this thing goes way back. I think time was altered like crazy somehow after the flood. Time as we know it was altered. I think it goes back to the Younger Dryas, roughly 12,000 years ago. There's an event, and of course the skeptics, this has nothing to do with the days of Noah. You don't know that. You're just making stuff up. And I don't know it either. I'll cede that point to you. But it's intriguing, isn't it? That the Younger Dryas and about 10 to 12,000 years ago, some kind of a global flood, because every culture has a global flood, did time as we know it shift? And I say, yes, it did. So that's why a 6,000 year model doesn't hold for me. I think it's, the earth is maybe millions of years old. It's not a new creation, but we're new on it. But it's not 6. It's more like 10 to 12,000. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I was asked this question, and really the concern is okay. So we do have prehistoric man, and we do have different fossils and records of the earliest humans, and this was obviously before Christ, way before. And so we look at that, and the question was, okay, so if there were these species, and we say it's different than us, when did they get souls? That's really the question. So when did we get a soul that really has this, that is savable, that is open to salvation, that can choose to worship an all-powerful God? And since God is outside of time,
right?
We don't know, because 6,000 years or 12,000 years to us could be 6 billion years or 12 billion years to him.
Right.
So we don't know, but what we do know is that even the earliest civilizations, pretty much, one of the very first religions, is totemism. They just think that, they're around nature.
Right.
Totemism is very natural. So you see, you'll a bear, and like, wow, bear is really strong. If I kill a bear, I can inherit the bear's, qualities and spirit. And then eventually they created totems to, worship, nature and these animals. But, these are examples of a spirit, of a soul inside somebody that says, there is something where I don't think, prehistoric man or, I don't think they had these, the same ontological ideas about spiritual connections and stuff like that. I just don't think so. Now, do I know the time of when that transition? No, I don't. But we definitely have evidence of it now, and we don't necessarily have evidence of it then.
It's just, some of this is just incredibly mysterious, and Christians will argue about, the earth was without form and void. See, it's a young earth, da, 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 da. Other people like myself, this thing goes back. Because the fall of Lucifer, I mean, Lucifer just isn't created as one of the anointed cherubs, and then all of a sudden, we're going to have a rebellion, doggone it. I mean, who knows? See, the thing for me is, and this is what the great mystery is: how long, how long did the rebellion take, for crying out loud? I don't. Again, this is what the whole thing of the 6-day creation just falls of its own weight. So let me say, Lucifer's created, and then all of a sudden, by golly, we're leading the rebellion. It's like, what? No, they're created. They watch this thing happen. They all sing for joy. Whether that's the first or the second, who knows? But I think that the fall took a long time.
Yeah.
I think it took a long time.
Great. And that could be our point to where now there is a certain level of spiritual warfare, right?
Yeah,
because you have
absolutely.
two kingdoms. You have the dark kingdom, and then you have God's kingdom.
Right.
And there's biblical references to Lucifer talking to God. In Job,
I was there.
he says, hey, have you considered my servant Job? He's well, I'm here, but you're there, and you have this hedge around him, and so I can't touch him. And then he tells him, well, no, this is your realm, this is your area, and so yeah, so there's a very good example of what caused that spiritual warfare that we're in now, that we're still dealing with right now, good and evil. And I think, when I think about, even the garden, and that tree, and now it's the knowledge, and that same knowledge that man desired, when Eve was deceived,
Right.
it's the same struggle that we're dealing with now. We want knowledge. We want to know. We want to prove that God doesn't exist. That's our goal. That's the evolution agenda. We can prove, we have this knowledge that God doesn't exist. And so, yeah, I think more than anything, as much as probably most atheists won't admit it, there's a spiritual warfare going on there between, the supernatural and the natural.
And frankly, in my opinion, we see this being played out like almost on a daily basis as we move closer and closer to the time of the end. Angel, thanks so much for coming on. It's always great to talk to you, get your insights on certain things, and we'll be back again the next couple of weeks talking about, we're not sure what, but maybe it balls in your court. You pick a topic and we'll run with it. How do people contact you if they so desire?
Best way is through my email. I'd love to take questions. I always respond. Always open to new ideas. So that's one thing in philosophy that we like new ideas. We like new arguments. We like new conversations. And so it's Angel, ANGEL _Castro at ucsb.edu.
One more time.
Angel, ANGEL _Castro, CASTRO at ucsb.edu.
Angel, thanks so much for coming on the record. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I know it's really informative because, look, folks, I'm not a philosopher. I don't have a degree in philosophy, but I've read, and, I'm familiar with some of the arguments, not all of them. It's great to have Angel here because he provides a level of expertise that's beyond anything I have. And so, we're kind of all going to school here talking about things that are pertinent to the church. So I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow with yet another show. Make sure you hit the members. Join. Please join for $9.99 a month. You get extended interviews. You get the free news magazine. You get 10% off of everything in the store. So right next to subscribe, you'll see join. Hit the join. We covet your membership. Thanks so much. We'll be back again tomorrow. Take care. God bless.